Now we're going to look at the second part of question 2. Question 2b. This is worth 4 marks. It's your investigation skills question, where effectively it's asking you to think. The question is asking you to think like a historian. You should be spending around 5 to 7 minutes on this question. It will ask you, how would you go about investigating information in a source further if you were researching it yourself? So make sure in the question it will tell you which source. Make sure you are speaking about the correct source. And then it will ask you to give a detail from the source you would follow up. So if you take a look at the example I've provided here, it's a crowded street scene with a police officer being outnumbered by a group of people. So it'll ask you to pick a detail from that source. Don't describe the whole picture, pick one detail. If it's a source which is a written text, pick a quote or a statement from the source. Don't summarize the whole thing. You want to pick a detail, one thing in the picture that you are going to investigate further. In the second part, you're going to say what question you would ask about that detail. In the third section, it's going to ask you what source you would use to find the answer to your question. You've got a list of sources here that you could use. I would use one of these ones. So you've got national records such as newspapers, records of crime and police investigation, Old Bailey records of trials, Punch cartoons. They're the satirical cartoons that we've looked at from newspapers and magazines. You've got local records. Remembering this question is specific to Whitechapel. So you've got housing and employment records, council records, census information, Charles Booth's surveys of Whitechapel, workhouse records, local police records, coroner's reports, photographs, and London newspapers. The final, so effectively you're getting 1 mark for each of these things: a detail from the source, a question you would ask, and a source you would find the answer in. The final mark comes from an explanation to say how this would help you understand better. Now, remembering as well, the question you are asking about the source has to relate to the inquiry focus you are given. So I'll explain that more in a second. The question will always start with, how could you follow up source A to find out more about, and then that's your question focus. So making sure the question you ask here relates to what your inquiry is supposed to be about. Okay. So you have to link these sections of the question together. Pick a source from this list here. Pick a source from this list to use in part 3 of it. So here you've got the source you've been given is this one here with the police officer being outnumbered. The question then says, how could you follow up source A to find out more about the effectiveness of the police in Whitechapel in 1888? So the question is about the effectiveness of the police in Whitechapel in 1888. So make sure my question that I'm going to ask here relates to that. Okay. In your answer, you must give the question you would ask and the type of source you could use. So, for example, what I'm going to say, detail in the source that I would follow up, I'm just going to pick one detail, which is the police constable is heavily outnumbered. So that links the detail to the inquiry focus. The inquiry focus being this bit here, effectiveness of the police. That's your inquiry focus. So I'm saying the police constable is heavily outnumbered. That's my detail that I'm going to investigate further. Then I need to think, what question am I going to ask about that? Link the question to the detail. I'm going to say, how many policemen were there patrolling Whitechapel in 1888? Why am I saying that? Well, because it's Whitechapel in 1888, and the question here says Whitechapel in 1888. Then I need to link that source, link the source I'm going to use to the question. So what source am I going to use to find out how many police were patrolling Whitechapel? I'm going to look at the police records, which you can see is on the list of sources over here. And there you go, local police records. So I'm saying H Division police records showing the number in the police force and details of their beats in 1888, again, because that's where the question is. Then finally, your final section is, how might this help answer my question? Link this with your own knowledge, because now the temptation here is to just say, it would tell me how many police were in Whitechapel in 1888, because here you've asked the question, how many police were there patrolling Whitechapel in 1888? And here you might just be tempted to say, it would tell me how many police were in Whitechapel. We're going to say that's wrong. Do not do that. Okay, because if you look here, it wants you to use your own knowledge. You're going to show that you know the answer to this question. So you're going to start this one, the sentence here, with I would expect to find that. So what would we expect to find? Well, we know that the police were heavily outnumbered. We're going to go further than that. We're going to say I would expect to find that H Division was understaffed, having only 575 officers on patrol to control a population of 35,000, meaning their effectiveness was limited. Which you look up here again is part of the question focus, isn't it? So I am linking my answer here to the inquiry here.